Hey everyone, so I'm back with a process video in my 2021 album that I'm keeping in my Felicity Jane Note to Self binder. And I have here a 6x8 pocket page spread that I'm doing that documents a whole bunch of movies that I've watched recently. So there's a bunch of movies that I've never seen before that happen to be trilogies or like a set of trilogies. And so I have been watching a set of trilogies every weekend. And so I have the movie posters to the movies that I've been watching. So I have the Hobbit trilogy. I just have one poster there to represent that. I have Lord of the Rings trilogy. Again, only one poster, the first movie, to represent that. I have the first trilogy, the prequels for Star Wars, and then I have the Star Wars trilogy. And then I have like a one-off poster here of the live-action Mulan, because I did watch those between all of the trilogy watching. And this is just weekends of watching movies, watching like a trilogy like every weekend almost. So I printed out all of the movie posters 2x3. They're roughly 2x3 in size because I wanted to layer them on top of 3x4 cards. And so I print them a little bit smaller so that I can do some fun, scrappy goodness behind them and like around them and stuff like that, instead of having the movie poster be the 3x4 card. And so I'm using the Felicity Jane Millie kit for this, and right now I just have the posters in the pockets where I think I want them to go. And you'll see here that I kind of struggle in the beginning to kind of figure out like how I wanted this particular pocket page spread to look like. And yeah, I take a lot of fiddling around. I rearranged some cards. I cut down some of the pattern papers to 3x4 to see if they look good on the back. My initial idea was to make a bunch of flaps so that, like, since none of the movie posters like matched in color, it was very hard to figure out like the color scheme I should go with. And so I figured, oh, I can cut down some white cardstock and make like little card flaps so I can like put the white cardstock in and then fold it over and then cover that with pattern paper and have the movie poster be in the pocket, and then the little flap, you have to lift it up to see the movie poster, and then maybe just using the alphas to write out the movie name on the top of the flap. I don't know. It was very complicated in my head, and it's actually would have came out really cool, maybe, but it would have just been a bunch of flaps like on the pockets, and I'm just like, that's a little too much. And so you'll see that I fiddle around with actually doing that, and then I decided to not do that because then I realized, oh, it's just going to be a bunch of flaps of pattern paper with like the movie titles on top of it. That's not very visually appealing because there's no photos because all of them are hidden. And so I've decided to change up the entire color scheme so that way I can actually show the movie posters, like I don't have to hide them. And so I kind of looked at all of the posters that I had here, and what really stood out the most was like the yellow orange color of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit poster, and the episode 1 poster that I chose was like in the desert, and so it had that sort of beige yellowish color. And I'm just like, okay, there's a lot of yellow here. Maybe I should just stick with black and white. And the Millie kit actually has a little bit of this like mustardy yellow in it. And so I was just like, let me just stick with black and white and add a little bit of the mustard yellow as like the accent like color, I guess, and then use the other colors from the kit, like other pieces of the kit, to just add a little bit of color, because the Mulan movie poster has a lot of that bright red, so it's like just to balance out that sort of color in like somewhere else on the pockets. And so I just took out the little cut apart sheet from the XOXO mini paper pack. It's a 6x8 paper pack. So I decided to go with the black and white papers and cards and stuff from the Millie kit and use those cut aparts as my embellishments, those black and white and like neutral cut aparts as the embellishments for my cards. And so you'll see I'm trying to still make those pockets work and the color scheme that I wanted to use work, and it just didn't end up happening. And so I completely abandoned the whole thing. And so I think this is where I kind of figured out that I needed to switch it up a little bit. I did move the Star Wars poster and I swapped it with that little tag ledger card, that's where I'm going to keep my journaling. And so I'm not going to do anything to that card there. It's just going to be straight journaling. The other cards I begin to place pattern papers behind. And I really wanted to use that floral paper, but again, I switch it up and decide to go with a yellow black and white color scheme. And so for the Hobbit card, I'm using the back side of the card that I had in the other side of the pocket, and since it's grid, it's like neutral, and so I kind of tore up some of that. It's like a white with little black heart paper. I think this one that I use is from the mini kit, and I just kind of tore it up and just glued it onto that grid paper, or the grid card that was there, and that's going to be the base of that particular card. And then for the Star Wars cards, I actually put down some of that black and white star paper because, hi, Star Wars. I do believe I end up swapping them because I only end up using one behind a poster because I put that same pattern as the 4x6 paper. And so you see here I begin to cut apart some of the some of the tags and some of the little tabs from that black and white neutral kit because I figured out that, oh, this has to be very neutral with like hints of color. And so I just started fussy cutting them out so that I have them handy. I actually do end up using that tag, the black tag with the white stripes, behind the Star Wars poster, and this is where I figured out that I needed to add some of that yellow. And so I'm working on that card and trying to figure out how I should kind of incorporate that yellow because I didn't want the card itself to be yellow. And so I took the other piece of that ripped small heart on white paper because it was like a longer strip, and I'm like, oh, I can layer it over that yellow piece, and so that the yellow sticks out a little bit, but it doesn't take over the card because I kind of wanted to keep this neutral so that the colors from the posters would work. And so I built up a card layering those pieces, and then I put the movie poster back on top and then tucked that tag that I cut apart behind it, and I feel like that worked really well, and I liked the texture that the ripped paper gave, and so I figured, you know what, I'm gonna go with this. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do black and white, and I'm gonna do the yellow. So you see me that I'm like switching out my cards and my patterns and stuff like that because that's what I was going with. And so I was trying to balance out the patterns. So the Hobbit had that small black heart on white ripped paper, and then on the bottom right, the Star Wars card had that same pattern. And so I knew that for the Lord of the Rings poster, it needed the yellow to balance out the yellow of the Star Wars. And so I cut up some more of that paper. I originally was going to use a journaling card, and then I'm like, oh, there's this paper with like little red, yellow starbursts, and I wanted to use, but I knew that I needed to balance out that bold striped yellow paper there. And so I kind of cut up those pages to make little cards, and I ended up actually using the starburst yellow pattern paper behind the Mulan poster because I figured that would work well there too. And so I'm trying to figure out what I can add behind the Hobbit card, and I decide to add another tag on there. And so I use this black, it's like a black floral tag, but it worked really well because it complemented what was on the Star Wars card, like the on the bottom right. And so that's what I end up doing there. And I'm just doing this again to balance out all of the colors and the patterns because I like having everything be symmetrical. And the way I think about my pocket pages is like each card, like each pocket is its own like little canvas. It's its own little layout, I guess you can say. But so I build them up that way, but the spread as a whole has to be cohesive, and so I think of that as a larger layout. And so that's how I really build up my pocket pages. And so I glued that one down, and that one looks good. And now I'm working on the episode 1 poster, and I originally had that neutral tag behind it, but since that desert scene is so neutral, I'm like, there needed to be something else there. So I do believe I end up changing that eventually. And now I'm looking through my embellishments, the ephemera pack specifically, and pulling out things. I wanted to use that one ticket and the cupcake because I was thinking of labeling this spread movie time, and you know, I remember eating a lot of sweets and stuff while I was watching, and then the ticket kind of looks like a movie ticket, and so I was going with that, and so I kind of layered that on top of the 4x6 card because I knew that was going to be my title card. For the Lord of the Rings, I decided to mat the actual movie poster photo on some of the grid paper. This is just the grid paper that you get for the Note to Self binders, and then I'm matting that on top of this little black and white squiggly paper from the Millie kit. And then I'm adding that cluster on top of that yellow paper that I cut into a card. And that's just so that I have a nice yellow frame around it, but that yellow isn't so like in your face. Once I do that and glue that down, I actually start embellishing the Hobbit card. I put one of the stars from the ephemera pack that's yellow on top of there, and then I put a red puffy heart so that it complements the red in the Mulan poster. And so I have that there. It's just a little touch, but it balances those colors out. And now I'm working on the episode 1 poster, and I decided to repeat that yellow, but like having it stick out a little bit. And I have like a grid pattern on the other side, and that's from the tag kit. I actually cut up one of the tags, and on the inside had like a grid, like a yellow grid, and so I'm like, let me use this piece just as layering pieces. And you see here I went and fussy cutted a different neutral tab to put on the top there, because that other neutral one was just it was disappearing because of the movie poster, and so I decided to use one that had some of that gray and some of that black. And I'm just gluing everything together, and I end up putting, I think, a red starburst, and like I wanted to put some hearts and stuff, but I actually end up switching that out to one of the labels that was in the ephemera pack. But for right now, that's how I leave it. And I begin working on the Mulan card. And so I'm trying to figure out what I can mat the photo on for that, because I don't want all of that starburst pattern to be showing through, and so I decided to take the same approach that I did with the Lord of the Rings poster and mat my poster of my Mulan poster on some of that grid paper and then on some of that squiggly black and white paper, and then glued that on top of the card so that only there's a nice little border of the background there. And so now I am looking through the embellishments and just putting down things to embellish some of the cards. I used another one of those stars from the ephemera pack that's in like that darker like grayish blue, and I layered that on top of the Star Wars card with another red heart. And then you see that I went back to the episode 1 card there, and I was pulling up that red starburst, and you know, once you stick something down on a photo, especially if it's glossy, it leaves like a residue and everything. So I decided to use the little, like it's a little red label from the die cut pack, and I just kind of cut it a little bit so that it's like not a whole tag, and then I put one of the kind of gingham plaid puffy hearts on top, and then I used the little essential mini puffy stickers to write out fave, because out of all the Star Wars stuff that I've watched, I really liked the prequels, and so I needed to put something there on that label, and so I'm just like, you know what, let's just put fave because I really enjoyed this one. And so that's what I did on that card. And I believe I then start working on the 4x6 card, because all of the journaling cards seem to be like done. For the Mulan and for the Lord of the Rings poster, I don't actually embellish because it has all those the 3 layers of paper. And so here I'm pulling out the red alphas from the Millie kit, and I am just spelling out movie time pretty much. And so I kind of use my ruler to help me straighten the alphas, and they still go down like not straight, but you know, 'tis life. But before I do that, I actually take some more of that yellow pattern paper and I rip a piece out. First I trim down a piece, and then I rip it because I felt like there was just so much empty space on that 4x6 card, so I decided to have like a little yellow ripped edge on the bottom, so that it balances out the rest of the yellow in the spread. And so I do that, and I trim it down, and then position some of the other die cuts on it. So I have the little cupcake there, have the little ticket, and then I'm going to use that red starburst die cut that I was going to use on the poster. I decided to put it there, and then one of the little buntings from the ephemera pack. So here I am trying to put down my title as best that I can. It doesn't end up being that straight. I actually have to go back in off camera to really straighten it down. But once I know where my title roughly is, I begin to glue down all of the die cut pieces. And I just add one of the little mini red hearts to that card next to where I have the little red starburst, and that little heart is actually from the Millie alphabet set. And it's just a little puffy heart there just to have a nice little accent there. And once I glued down the little bunting there and I put my card back in the pockets, my spread is basically done. I do my journaling off camera, but in the photos to follow, you can just see everything and how it turned out. I will leave links to the Millie kit and the little black and white add-on kit in the description box down below. These are affiliate links, so I do get a little commission when you purchase through my links, but they'll be linked to the Felicity Jane shop, and I will be sure to leave a link to the corresponding blog post in the description box as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Bye!